What if I told you that Pokemon cards have outperformed standard investments by over 4 times in the past decade? And I'm not kidding if I tell you this, because if you would have invested $1,000 10 years ago in the S&P 500, that would have been worth around $3,000 today. But if you invested that same $1,000 into Pokemon cards, on average you would have $12,000. Now in this video I'm going to break down why Pokemon cards are actually beating standard investments and why this is a great time for you to start investing. I'll also cover some pro tips that you can use that can actually make your investments more profitable, so let's get right into it. First up, Pokemon cards has really proven itself over the past couple of years. For example, 10 years ago we were in the X and Y era and Pokemon was definitely not as popular as it is today. Now there have been a lot of sets that have been released in the X and Y era that's very popular and expensive today. But the worst set from the X and Y era is probably gonna be Steam Siege. People just didn't like the set, and because of that booster boxes went for around $100 to $120. But if you're gonna take a look at the value of this box today from the worst set from the X and Y era, this box is still worth around $700. So if you would have bought the worst set you could possibly buy 10 years ago, you would still have a 7 times return of investment, which is just crazy if you think about it. But if you're gonna take a look at one of the best sets from the X and Y era, which is probably gonna be Generation, these ETBs went for around $50 when they were released. However, today they're starting at $1,500 a piece. That's a 30 times return of investment. Now there's one set which is gonna be Flashfire, which was so popular and printed so short that booster boxes already go for $16,000. But you have to remember that this was the most popular set you could possibly buy. So if you would have bought 10 boxes, for example, from this set, you would have been very lucky. But the point that I'm trying to make is, even if you bought the worst possible box you could buy 10 years ago, you would still have a very good return of investment. So even if you're just getting started with Pokemon cards, starting to invest is just not that complicated. However, I can imagine that if you're a beginner, that it can be very nice to just have a little bit of guidance. And you're already making a great start by watching these kind of videos. But I also wrote a free ebook you can download in the description completely for free, which teaches you the basics of Pokemon card investing. And even if you know quite a lot about Pokemon cards already, it's still awesome to read. So make sure to download it for free in the description. Next up, Pokemon cards, and actually every single TCG has one opportunity which you don't really have with, for example, crypto or stocks, which is gonna be grading. And if you're not familiar with grading, it's basically sending one of your Pokemon cards to a company like PSA, CGC or Beckett, and they determine whether your card is in a great condition or not. And if your card is in a great condition, you can get a gem min 10, which is the best grade you can get. And then the card can be worth way more money. For example, let's say that this card is worth around $10. And in a PSA 10, this card goes for around $50. And in a PSA 9, it goes for, let's say, around $20. And actually, wait, let me check if that's the actual price. And honestly, I just made those numbers up. But if you're gonna take a look at the value of this card, it's worth around $6. In a PSA 9, it goes for around $24. And in a PSA 10, it goes for $65. Now imagine for a second that you buy 50 of these Venusaur cards from Celebrations. So like you just saw, these cards go for around $6. So let's quickly do the math. 50 times 6 is gonna be $300 just for the 50 cards. And then obviously you also need to pay grading fee, which is usually $15 to $20 per card. So if you're gonna say that grading a card costs $20, we're gonna add onto that $300 20 times 50 for the grading fees, of course. So that will make a total of $1,300 as investment. Now let's say that if you got lucky, 40 of these cards actually become a PSA 10 and 10 of these become a PSA 9. So if you're gonna take a look at the value again, we're gonna do 40 times $65, which is gonna be $2,600. And on top of that, we're gonna add 10 times 24, which is gonna give you a total of $2,840. So that means that you would have a profit of $1,540. And honestly, this method is not really that difficult. It only takes some time to actually find some cards that have the potential to become a PSA 10. But you don't really have the opportunity to actually grade in some other form of investment. For example, it's not possible to actually grade your Bitcoin. Next up, like I just said, short-term investing is just so much easier with Pokemon cards than with crypto or stocks. Because you don't have to learn the fancy charts, it's just buying a product that you know is gonna probably do well and then sell it again. And it may sound easier said than done, but it's actually not that difficult. And in my opinion, it's honestly way easier to find a great Pokemon card than it is to find a great altcoin that's gonna become valuable, for example. A really easy example what you can do for short-term investing is buying collection at 80% of the market value and reselling it at 100%, or let's say 95% of the value. And honestly, that is not really that difficult. If you're just gonna go onto eBay or Facebook Marketplace, there's just plenty of people probably in your area that want to get rid of their collection collection. And most of these people just want to have quick money, and because of that they sell that 80% of the market value. So you can really get a great deal, and at the difference of that 15 or 20% you can make a huge profit. For example, if you buy a collection for $800, you can probably sell a collection within a couple of days for $1,000, which means a $200 profit. And it could just be me, but in my opinion that's way easier than reading charts. Next up, something that makes Pokemon cards just really special is the fact that you can physically hold them. Because whether it's with dropshipping, some form of e-commerce or something else, you can't physically see or hold it. It's something that's happening on the internet, and a lot of people just think that it's very special to actually see and feel something. So because of that, Pokemon cards are starting to actually outperform traditional investments. In my opinion, Pokemon cards are truly a great investment nowadays. It's not just a collectible anymore, but it's actually starting to become an asset. However, if you don't have the right information, you can still make a lot of mistakes with Pokemon card investing. The Pokemon market has changed so much that even if you have a lot of experience, you can still make a lot of mistakes. So if you actually want to learn how to make money, make sure to check the description for my Pokemon investing course. It teaches you step by step how to actually start making money with Pokemon cards, and you don't need any experience at all. So it doesn't matter if you've been into Pokemon cards for 1 day or for 20 years. This course will teach you step by step how you can actually transform Pokemon cards from a hobby into an investment. So make sure to check out the Pokemon investing course in the description. Thank you a lot for watching, and I catch you in the next one. Bye bye.